Hi, welcome back to Tea Time in Olympia. I'm Lucas Miller, and my guests tonight are Lonness Valenna and Sheena from Seattle. We're going to talk a little bit about the issue of homelessness among transgender people and hopefully what we can do about it. So I'd like to hear a little bit about each of you, what you do in Seattle and what your experience has been with homelessness among trans people. And just tell us a little bit about your background and the work you do. Lonness, why don't you go
All right,
ahead.
I'll start. My name's Lonness Valenna. I am an intersex person, and I do a lot of advocacy work around homelessness within the Seattle area. I volunteer at shelters, and I'm also, I guess you can say, vice chair of a group called ECHO, which is Equality Coalition for Housing Opportunities. And what we do is we try to seek out unique solutions for homelessness that's facing transgender and gender nonconforming people within the area. We usually talk with people that are around the area and try to find couches, rooms for rent, or even just various places to stay. Plus we also kind of do, I guess you can call checks at shelters and whatnot. We'll get trans people to go in incognito and make sure that a lot of the shelters are being trans competent and treating us with the utmost respect.
Right.
And if not, we record all that and we turn it into various organizations and they get the information out. So it's kind of a fun thing. I also do fairy godmother work, which I help out trans children and whatnot. So I usually dress up in my wings and everything like I'm doing here. And if you remember, I was on the show last time about intersex issues, and I dressed up in my little fairy wings, and people were like, "What? Why is she doing that?" It's just part of what people know me as.
Because it's cool, obviously.
Yeah, of course it's cool, and it's shiny.
I mean, do you need a better reason?
No, not really. It's just, it's something fun. They recognize me, and when people come up, I can actually educate them on different aspects, and I don't mind being that kind of person to say, well, this is what an intersex person is, this is what a trans person is, and this is some of the problems we face within our community.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm just a spider in the middle of the web in some aspects. Like I was caught in the web, I guess.
All right. Sheena, tell us about your experience.
So I do some activism as well. Mostly what I do is trail around behind Lonness because she likes taking on 2 or 3 persons worth of work. And so sometimes she doesn't have someone else to do that other 1 or 2 persons worth of work. And so I try to chip in and let her actually, get to the fairy godmothering bit and not have to worry about some of the smaller details, which I guess makes me a secretary. And I don't feel like that describes me well, but whatever. As far as like my background, God, I think that was just like 4 years ago. Yeah, just 4 years ago, I was in a moderately expensive college for game design, actually, and things rapidly went south when the student loan agency I was going through wouldn't, give me money for a second year, right? Or rather loan me money, right? Because it's not like they're handing it out. And then since I had come out by that time and my parents were kind of not liking me much anyway, they decided that I wasn't worth supporting anymore. So I didn't technically become homeless properly until about a year after that. But it was very, very up and down, very unstable until I eventually crashed down into full and utter homelessness. I never had to do the whole sleeping on the street thing. I did, get into shelters because I had people, making sure I was prepared ahead of time. But even having unfair advantages, for a homeless person, right, it was still not fun. And then currently, despite being on all kinds of assistance programs, I'm still having extreme trouble actually getting a place to stay. And so I'm mostly here because I have seen what the homelessness system it looks like and the housing assistance system looks like, and they are not good.
Okay.
Sadly, no.
So tell us, what do you see as being the major obstacles generally for transgender people experiencing homelessness? What are the biggest barriers that people face trying to access either temporary shelters or, to get into secure, stable housing? What are the main, apart from the obvious things like, discrimination on the basis of gender identity or expression, what do you see as being, the major hurdles to overcome?
Do you want to go first?
If you want.
I'm fine
Well,
with going first.
why don't you tell us
Yeah.
what,
Yeah, go ahead.
what
So
hurdles you've had to get
yeah,
over?
so the main hurdles I've found, the first is knowing what's actually out there. Because, I was, impoverished and at risk for homelessness, almost 2 years before I actually was in the shelter system. If I had known about DSHS, right, and had been on, I'd been on Apple Health for a while, but I wasn't aware of, ABD and things, or HEN. If I had known about these systems and had been on them, I would probably have had much more stable housing.
Just for our viewers, what is HEN?
Oh, that is the Housing and Essential Needs Program.
Oh, okay.
It is a state-run, a state-funded, state, I guess you could say mandated program.
Okay.
That it basically provides rent and utility assistance. There's local providers for each county. So if you're in, say, I believe in Pierce County it's the Sharon Care House. In King County I believe it's the Catholic Community Services.
Okay.
So you'll see those names splashed about, but they're just the local providers. They don't actually fund it.
I see.
It's a state program, just so you know.
You don't happen to know what it is in Thurston County?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I sometimes when I trail Lonness around, I forget which county I'm in. So
Yeah, I get around. Usually, I get around on my skates, but
Yes.
I would say the other problem I found is sometimes it's not actually discrimination in the systems themselves. For example, age-blind disabled, I haven't really, I had no troubles getting onto it, and I haven't had too much trouble with them kicking me off of it. And similarly, all of the day centers I've been to, have allowed me in the door. They haven't kicked me out or something.
Okay.
But the people inside them,
Right.
sometimes it's the other people there.
yeah.
They're
Seems to be
saying
the case a lot.
we should, you're a man, you shouldn't be in a women's shelter, or, or we don't need your kind here, or,
And do you find that's from the staff or from the other people, from the other clients trying to access?
It's a mixture.
Okay.
It's definitely a mixture. In the shelters, for the most part, it was the other people at the shelters.
Okay.
For DSHS, it was, there's, what I've been finding personally is that there's one or two people that are just somewhere in the background. You never see them. They never interact with the clients, but they have just enough information to know, what minorities people belong to, and just enough power to lose a piece of mail or check the wrong box, and things that they would never get caught for. They'll never get in trouble for.
Right.
But the systems allow them to put a lot more stress and busy work on trans people as compared to other people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really not the systems itself. It's the people that they let into the systems.
Okay.
Well, I actually find it's some of the administration as well. I went actually undercover in a place that I will not name, but when I got there, And when I asked to use the restroom, because it's one of the things on our checklist, and they pointed to a little closet room over there and said, "That's the heathen bathroom." I'm like, excuse me? So sometimes,
you wouldn't think they'd get that many heathens.
I know, right?
I mean, I'm sure the heathen community is delighted to have their own bathroom, but really,
wow, they got a
much use
heathen
did
one
it
right
get
even
on?
before gender neutral? Yeah, I didn't know we were that progressive, right?
yeah.
But in all seriousness, we've been seeing a lot of that, even with the distribution of certain things, like how they have feminine products, sometimes extra bras and everything, and they refuse to give like a bra to a trans woman when she needs something, even if she has, I guess what we call cutlets. And also for trans men, they refuse to give them hygiene products. And, that can be just kind of devastating in that aspect. Another thing is kind of the gender variance between them. I mean, if you're as non-binary, sometimes you can get by in different places, but in Seattle, we only have one major male shelter, and it's while we have like 14 different smaller shelters and one or two big ones that's specifically for women. So I will say that sometimes the trans men actually have it harder in this aspect. And then the whole thing of, well, if they're men, then they can sit there and get a job easier, which usually ain't the case when they're of a diversity that is outward, different looking. And, we all transition at different times, moments. We all are on different steps on the long path to becoming our true selves. And that congruency doesn't meet the congruency of our society, even in a progressive places, Washington here.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the major problems for trans men, even fully transitioned and, fully passable trans men, is that sometimes, there are irregularities with their ID, or, they haven't changed their gender marker on everything, or they have to, if they're applying for jobs, they have to give previous names. And quite often that can prove a barrier to getting employment or, accessing services. Do you find is that a...
I've heard many cases of such from the whole spectrum. In fact, it's not even just a trans or a person of diversity problem. It's a systemic problem, I guess, with the system itself. And even some of the cis and allies we have are going through the same problems. We literally have a homeless crisis. And it's kind of a bad way of putting it, but we offer so much to people in disparity that they flock up here. And that's a good thing, they want to come here. And I'm all for it, but we do need to put more funds, more state and local city funds, and even county funds into these programs to make sure that they are doing due diligence and provide services with dignity, which a lot of times we're finding they are not. And I want to get a little bit into my background because of the fact I was abandoned at age 12, like I said in my previous time I was here, and I've been homeless for 7+ years in various different cities. And at a younger age and a little bit in my older age up here around Tacoma. And it's been enlightening finding out all the different things. But even as myself, I didn't find out about like the Rainbow Center in Tacoma, which is like the main hub in Upper Washington, or in that after at least a few months before I was here. And I got the information from a community college. Before then, I was going all around Seattle and couldn't find anything because the groups are so well hidden to try to stop all this outside harassment that someone just coming here and seeking out asylum, basically, from some of these, can I say red states?
Sure.
Or red state of mind.
Yeah.
It's been, the numbers have been staggering. We've been taking polls within the shelters while we're there with other various people's diversity, and it's a staggering number, and how many of them are just not getting help. And when, like she said, seeking out the resources are difficult. You can call 211, but unless a company is actually, unless a company is fully giving their information to the services 211 so that the information can get out, which a lot of them aren't. Because you have to pay a tax when you do that. You have to pay a fee in order to put something on 211.
Ah, yes.
So a lot of places just don't do it. And you have to learn by word of mouth, by going out there and talking with these people.
So do you think it would be helpful if local, for example, nonprofit organizations or, entities, say, with their own websites were to publicize that information more widely?
That would be a start, but I honestly think that some city or county funds should be put forth to build a group and to train people to go out into the places and literally give out information. Because how many of these people have access to actual internet? And if they have internet, how do they find these websites?
Right.
They don't know. And so the best way to do this is to actually have someone go there, and word of mouth travels farther on the street level than it does on any website.
Yeah. We have a little bit of that here in Olympia. We have our downtown ambassadors, and we have our, the folks at Partners in Prevention Education do outreach, and the folks at Sidewalk do some outreach. But all of that, of course, is through nonprofit organizations with very little in the way of state support. So you mentioned having experienced homelessness in a number of different cities. What do you think about how different cities in Washington have approached their homeless population? For example, Seattle versus Tacoma versus Olympia,
Well, in Seattle currently, we're having a lot of problems, mainly with trying to find funds for the stuff. All the places are competing with each other to try to get funds, and most of them are kind of bowing down to certain corporate entities that start with a large A, and they've been not the best of picky of things. I'm actually talking with one of the heads of that company's LGBT organization, and along with working closely with Gender Justice League, if you heard about them.
Yeah.
And we're trying to assess what they can do. And they do allocate money for this, but it gets spread into, areas where it really doesn't get to the people. It pays. They're basically paying people to research what's going on instead of actually going to the people and asking what's going on. A lot of these organizations are just, being money black holes, if you will.
Yeah.
But some are truly trying, I do admit. Gender Justice League has been doing a wonderful job. The Elizabeth Gregory home, a shelter that I volunteer at and everything, that is for women and women identified, but also non-binary and trans men go there too.
Okay.
And they're perfectly accepted. And they've been a great resource. But this company has yet to even acknowledge them. But they'll acknowledge this other place that only accepts women, and they're very cut and dry on what they identify as a woman.
I mean, so I know last time I was at the shelter you're talking about.
That's actually where I rescued you. The very first time. Same thing with.
I met you at Elizabeth Gregory Home.
Oh wait, no, that was the other girl.
Yes, the other place we are apparently not naming, funded by the company we are apparently not naming. At least last time I was there, which was before they got all of the mega corporation money. They actually, the staff was okay with trans women, and we're trying to support trans women. But as they put it, because everyone was coming in with so much frustration and anger and stress, it turned into kind of like a prison environment. And so anything that they could rally against, or rally with as a unifying cause, they would. And if that was transphobia, then they would. So yeah, the shelter itself was trans friendly, but the people there, the experience of going to that shelter was not. I don't know if it's the same. I know mega corporation money has a tendency to corrupt things, so they might be a lot worse now.
Okay, so so it sounds like one of the major barriers is just the atmospheres of the shelters themselves. What do you see as how do we remedy that? I mean, is it the sort of situation where if people went in to maybe like train the staff,
Actually, we have organizations that go in and train them, and Gender Justice League is one of them. But training the staff is one thing, but also the people that come in also bring a lot of their stuff in. And because of safety's sakes, they usually have to separate or segregate us from the general population inside shelters. Okay, all you people, you're sleeping here. I unfortunately got to ask you to move your cot over there to the corner so that, and that just separation it gets to you. It makes you feel really lesser and
isolated.
Very much so.
I mean, it can actually even have the opposite effect. Like when I was staying at, it's a different shelter that I guess we probably shouldn't name. So the staff actually liked me quite a bit. And they made sure that even though there was quite a bit of transphobia going around the shelter, that I was always someplace that they could make sure I was safe. But instead of making me feel lesser, it actually made me feel privileged in the eyes of everyone else there. And so I actually started getting picked on not just because I was trans, but because I was turning into, as far as they could tell, a pet of the staff. To the point where at one point there was a rumor going around that I was a mole and was actually working for the shelter.
Yeah, well, that's...
Yeah. It does not always pay to be a nice person.
So it sounds like there was definitely some othering going on either way.
Yeah.
The price to be paid for that extra safety, was a feeling of being, separate.
Yeah, it got to the point where if I did not have a staff member in sight, I moved because I knew that the instant I was caught alone, they might not like physically hurt me, but they could totally rail into me or, try to take some of my things, and there's nothing I could do about it. If a staff member was not there to see it, it didn't happen.
Now, you talk about asking for solutions to this, or what I would think would be a solution.
Yeah.
And besides going to the obvious thing that most trans people go is they go, first of all, capitalism is a big, horrible thing, and I won't deny that. But in the system we live in right now, we are having extreme gentrification across the region.
Yeah.
Not just in Seattle, but it's spreading out. Most of us, even with a full-paying job, we can't afford to keep a rent without having multiple people in even a small apartment.
Yeah.
And it gets even worse as you go down the line to the people that are on the street, or people like me and her that are actually on assistance. And it's difficult because a lot of businesses found a loophole where they won't even take government assistance now.
Yeah, the specific loophole is, and it pisses me off because me and Lonness actually went down to talk to legislators to help get the law passed.
Yeah.
To ban discrimination based on source of income.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that law they passed only protected people from directly discriminating. It didn't stop them from making eligibility requirements that are like literally no one on assistance could match. Like for example, one of them, the most popular one I'm seeing is income and credit or credit score.
Yeah, if you're using credit score.
They'll like say you must have at least twice your income must be at least twice the rent. And if you're on, government assistance, most of your assistance is your rent. And even though like you're probably, they're probably spending a fair bit of money on you for like the healthcare, that's technically not money that's going through you, so it doesn't count. And so on the books, it's small. In fact, even HEN doesn't go through you either. It goes directly to the company. So like for me, as far as, any place I'm going into, trying to get into, as far as I care, my income is $200 a month, which isn't even close to being the rent, let alone more.
Right.
So I think one of the solutions we can is to implement what a few cities have actually in Hawaii and some in Oregon, and kind of push for city and county legislation. I'm sorry, my Cajun's coming out. It's hard for me to say large words sometimes. But yes, we need actually ceilings on how much rent can be done within a county. Because right now the rents are going so high, and because of the tech, all the people from Amazon, Microsoft, all these other companies that are coming in startup tech companies, and they're paying so high, so they can charge this much. And there's just so much that is pushed out. Right now, Capitol Hill used to be in Seattle, the main gay district or gayborhood. And now that it's become this so heavily priced area because of Amazon moving in, that it's priced out everybody, and most of the queer people or people diversity have moved to the U District and out of town to either Renton and surrounding areas down to Tacoma. A lot have come down here actually to Olympia in Thurston County.
And they're finding the same situation here, that where rents are going up, and almost all the new housing that's being built is $800 a month or more for a one bedroom. It's
800. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, by my standards, that's really good. It saddens me to say, but
right now we're looking at trying to start a new trans home, and we're looking at over $2,000 for rent just for a 3-bedroom small little hole in the wall.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's actually a really good deal, because most of the places I was looking at it, they're wanting like $1,000 for a studio apartment.
Oh God, that should be criminal, honestly.
It honestly should be.
It does seem that landlords are being allowed to.
Oh sure.
Oh, can I have just hot water?
Oh sure.
Thank you very much.
Here you are. I brought my own tea.
We have real tea on Tea Time for once.
Got a lovely blooming tea. I do tea parties for like trans kids and everything, so they can have that experience. So I have all this fun tea stuff. I figured I'd bring it because it's in the name.
Well, it's definitely a higher tone than what we're used to. Do you have any advice for trans people trying to access services, either from the state or from the nonprofits that are trying to be part of the solution, apart from getting the information out to the population more?
At the moment, the best thing to do is, if you're in this area or in areas around here, contact the Rainbow Center in Tacoma. They have a wealth of information that even 211 doesn't have.
Okay.
They have people that are paid to seek out all these opportunities and have that available. And just say what say what county you're from and where you're seeking help, and they'll give you a whole list of all sorts of services and that are within the area, if there are any. The problem is certain areas don't have as much as others. Like if you go down to Bremerton, it's very difficult, even though you have the base over there and everything. But it's just it gets pretty bad, especially the farther out you get from the main Olympia and Seattle. Once you head out from there,
Right.
Yeah. So to that end, my advice would be that, as far as I know, Apple Health, ABD, that's Aged, Blind, Disabled, and HEN, which is Housing Essential Needs, are all state programs. So
Okay.
you can be in the most rural of rural areas, and as long as there is a DSHS office somewhere, you can still get on these programs.
Okay.
There's no guarantee that there's slots for HEN, but the other two, as long as you're poor, you're pretty much guaranteed to get on them. Well, I mean, ABD, you usually have to have some kind of disability, but it's
Right.
pretty lenient. It's like,
Okay.
I'm depressed because I'm poor. Cool.
Okay.
You're on ABD.
yeah, that actually counts as a PTSD in some aspects.
Yeah.
Now, what about Section 8 housing? What is is that connected to any of these other programs, or
Yeah, I mean, if you get it,
not so accessible?
yeah,
It's a lottery, honestly. It's a lottery to get into a lottery. I've seen someone that's been on it 4 times.
Wow. Okay.
4 times in a row. They waited for about a year, and then they say, you came close, but we have to put you at the beginning of the line because you weren't this select group of people that got in.
Okay.
And when they do get in, I mean, they rarely get affordable housing. All these new uprisings and buildings, and mostly a city only sets aside, 10% of anything for low income, and still low income is income based off of the whole. So low income still might be 1,000 or something. And when you can't get a job or when you're on disability, right now the HEN program at most will give you 600, and that's like downtown, like middle Seattle. You come out here and it'll probably be less.
yeah. Just as a correction, it's actually, I don't know how long it's been 1,000, but it did get at some point raised to 1,000 in Seattle. But it's really picky on whether you can actually get that much. It's 600 is the much you can rely on. Sometimes they bump you up to 1,000.
And just as a side note, last year, and this is the main problem while a lot of people were in homelessness, including us, was they'd put you on ABD if you qualify, which gives you about $197 cash,
Okay.
and you're on food stamps with that. That's nice, right?
So 197 cash plus
Food stamps.
food stamps.
And then when you get on HEN,
And that's usually like,
yeah, but after 2 years they'd
Yeah.
kick you off because you've been on it for too long, and then now you qualify for HEN because you couldn't have one or the other. So HEN would pay for your rent, but nothing else, and most people had to, find other various ways of getting money for just food and things. And they'd go back and forth, and just recently, even me, her, and a few others went down to Olympia here and actually talked to some of our state leaders, and we actually got in a room with 7 important people for about 5 minutes, and we showed them all the stuff on this, and within 2 weeks we had a new thing stating that HEN and ABD can be done together. And it's
good.
saved and helped so many people, especially some of the ones that we talked about in the, so there's no longer a cutoff date for either now. Instead of 2 years on, 2 years off. And when you're like that, hey, I got a home for 2 years, and now I get to eat for 2 years. And you're back on the street. And
Right,
it's just, you can't have that constant transit
Yeah, of course.
in order to get out of homelessness.
Yeah.
It's almost like the system perpetuated keeping us down.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
a lot of Washington came together, and we had a big show of people out there, and it was amazing that was one victory for us. And
Good.
it was all, I will say that in this room that they allowed us 7 people, it was all trans people
Oh, yeah.
that were all homeless at the time.
Okay.
So it was great talking to them, even though if it was for a short time, but they listened.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one thing that we have to try to do is try to communicate more with our state officials and show them the problem.
So were these legislators, I mean, were these like members of the state House, Senate, what?
Yeah.
So they were, honestly, it was, it felt kind of silly because we weren't always entirely sure who we were talking to, just that they were important. So I'm not sure technically whether they were representatives or senators or what. We just know that they were part of the state legislature.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there are allies at the state level.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Just getting our voices to them is kind of an issue and a problem.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
baffling because we got into a room with them and like, you know, when we started
He picked us out of a large crowd, too. So.
Yeah, when we started explaining about ABD and HEN, they were like, wow, I didn't know it worked that way. And you know, one
You
of them
were oblivious.
pointed towards his, I don't know if he was assistant or aide or whatever his official title was, like, can you look up some details on this and have it to me by tomorrow? It was
Yeah.
kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so just tell us a little bit more about your experiences or what you've encountered. What is when a trans person comes into one of the houses or into your kind of sphere of activity, like what's the first thing you ask them, or what's the first thing you try to address?
Well, a lot of,
So, I have been through that process.
well, if you want
Yes.
to tell the process.
Yeah, so Lonness's process is So Lonness has this thing about when she meets a trans woman for the first time, she introduces herself, and then in my case, she pulled me into a back room so we could talk in private. That I wouldn't have to worry about other people overhearing us. And she introduced herself, explained her situation, then had me explain my situation. That way, she knew how best to help me, and I knew why to trust her. And like, it worked really well because as an activist, she knew what the resources were that I needed to know about.
Right.
But at the same time, when you're on the street, you kind of get,
Leery of people,
Yeah, you
especially
get-
weird people like me.
Yeah. It was kind of a weird experience when I first met her because like I kind of felt like I was being interviewed by a mob boss. Just because like,
With
suddenly,
fairy wings.
yeah, suddenly someone pulls you out of the crowd, pulls you to the back room and starts talking to you and trying to get to know you. It's like, it's a weird experience when you've been used to protecting yourself from other people, and it's honestly, that was one of my issues.
So establishing trust is the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very difficult to do that, especially with some women who have been really abused, not just by
Sure.
loved ones or family, but by people they truly trust, even within our own community. I've found that there are a few trans people that don't even want to be around other trans people.
Sure.
And it's understand, especially when you come from a place where they had to stay hidden a lot, and so everything was secretive, and when they come here, everybody's out and open. It's just such a culture shock to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to go really easy on talking with them. I give out more information about myself than what I should. Say, you know all this stuff about me. If you don't trust me, that's fine. But just know I'm here to help you. Here's a phone number. Here's my card. If you need to, here's some money so you can call me if that time ever comes.
Right. Well, this is one of the reasons why at Partners in Prevention Education, one of the services we offer is trauma-informed therapy.
That's wonderful that you have that.
Because we find that a lot of people, living on the street can often be a traumatic experience, and just by itself, and then there's all the other kinds of trauma that can happen as a result of that, So after establishing trust and, laying out some resources, what is the next? What else do you do?
Well, from there, I assess the situation. I usually come back and basically have counseling sessions because I've been trained through the Gender Alliance of South Sound with their facilitator training program, which talks about how to assess someone's needs and what they actually need and whether or not they're emotionally ready to take steps forward. Even if that is, talking about some issues. So if anything, I'm like a free therapist to them.
Okay.
And that's something that a lot of times they need because they don't have that in shelters. And half the time you can't go to just a regular therapist.
Yeah, I know. Before I met Lonness, whenever I met, someone else in a shelter, that I was like, it's like, okay, this person, isn't going to get enough help if someone doesn't step in and help them, especially if they were like a fellow trans woman or just, anyone that I could tell was not going to survive this brutal experience that is homelessness. I try to single them out and try to help them. And every time I did, it was kind of depressing because most of the time it was, I'd kind of do what she did, but, a little bit more subtle. Gotta be honest, not subtlety is not your forte. But most of the time
You haven't seen me when I go check out the shelters and everything. I look completely incognito.
Maybe, okay. But
That's hard to imagine, isn't it?
it's really hard to imagine. But because I mean, I know Lonness has had this problem too because we're, the people who seem to care the most because we've been in this situation.
Sure.
So we don't have the resources to help right away.
Right.
Like even Lonness right now, usually the best she can do is give them a couch for a few days. And a lot of times you can't even do that if they've already got a shelter position.
Yeah, and I can help out with bus money, maybe a meal or two, but I mean, I'm living off of ABD, which is only $197 a month, and I'm used to living off of so little, so
Yeah, so
I have a little extra funds to throw around.
Right.
yeah, so most of the time, all we can really do is talk to them, figure out what they need, and tell them to hold tight. We'll go see how we can, streamline this process. And then a lot of times it's we're giving them homework at the same time. Okay, we'll make sure to meet again next week. I'll talk to some people, see if, we can get them to organize some stuff to help you. But in the meantime, I need you to go to DSHS, and I need you to get on ABD, and I need you to get on food stamps, and I need to make sure you've got Apple Health. And if you're on Apple Health, you need to have your card on you at all times, and just stuff that when you're starving on the street, all of this bureaucracy just crushing. It's I don't know if I'm going to get to eat today, and you want me to spend 3 of my hours in a waiting room looking at a wall? It's
And a lot of times I'll go there and wait with them, and it's and then they start asking the typical things like, well, how am I going to get my name changed if I have to get all this information? Where am I going to get this? Because they just freshly came here.
Right.
Luckily, we have streamlined the name change process.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
How streamlined?
Actually, if you go down to it within King County, you can get your name changed if you go to the right place. Like in North Seattle, the lines are really short, and you can get a judge to go and get your name changed within 3 days. They'll have a date for you.
Wow.
Actually, it's not even that. At least in Redmond is where I had it done because at the time I was still going to school. Literally, when I got there, they were like, so I'm sorry, it's after, it's 2 p.m. right now. It's afternoon. If you'd gotten here at 11, we could have had your name changed today. And I was like,
yeah.
When did this happen? And then since then, I've also found out that whenever you need to go to court for anything, there's a form you can fill out to show that you are poor as heck. I think it's technically called indigent.
Indigent,
Right.
yeah.
And so with that, you can waive the court fees. So if you know what you're doing, you can have your name changed for free within a day.
Wow.
But most people don't know this.
I believe that varies from county to county.
It
Yeah.
does.
Because I always thought of our process here in Thurston County as being fairly streamlined, but I'm not aware that there's a way to waive court fees.
There's not a way, but if you go through the Gender Alliance of the South Sound, they have a name aid program in which
So
if
that
you
is still going?
As far as I know, it's still going. When I used to be head chair, I'm no longer. I stepped down after a number of years.
Yeah.
Not because anything wrong, it's just that it's time to pass it on to a younger generation.
Okay.
And I think they're still doing the name aid. I can go see, but so far, from what I hear, they're still doing it. And all you do is you go get your name done, find some way to pay for it, or get the fee waived, bring the receipt back, and we reimburse the receipt.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And usually it's by check, and you can even do it by mail. Just contact them, and they can help. Also, if you're in Tacoma, you are in luck. You're so lucky because of the fact when you go to the courthouse, you ask for a name change. They say go around the corner, and you see a name change kiosk. And then when you fill out everything on the kiosk, it automatically tells the thing to put it for a local judge. And that's how I did my name change when I got here, and it was amazing. It was
So that's essentially how we do it in Thurston County. You just go up to the civil court, you fill out a short form, you pay the fee, and then you just show up the next court date.
Okay.
Which is usually, I think it's like the first Thursday at, some ridiculous hour of the morning. And, you just wait till they call you, and it's usually just like, okay, this is your new name, go get your, certified, name change certificates. And it's, I did this back in 2005, and I imagine they've streamlined the process a little more since then, but it's...
Yeah, it's amazing here in this state.
In some places they make you run an ad in the paper for 3 weeks prior.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
They don't do that in
scary.
Thurston County. I guess they don't do that in King County. But I know they definitely do it in other states. So yeah, it could be a lot worse.
I'm really happy with how they've handled that. At least again, I guess there's some differences between King and Thurston, but it sounds like it's pretty much the same.
Pretty much, yeah.
But
so then what's kind of the next phase once you establish what somebody needs and what they're able to?
Then I basically become, like I said, the spider in the center of the web. I get in contact with organizations or with private people I know that have places that they can go to in order to get the resources, or if they're needing a place to stay, or even just information on how to start hormones or whatever. Everybody's needs are different.
Sure.
Everybody's seeking certain things at a different level. And because of my flexibility and the amount of people I know, just by helping others, it's like, how can I repay you for, the help you did? If someone, I need your experience is what I need. So when I have someone else, I might send someone to you so you can help them go through this steps. And so that's what I do. I just connect one person to another.
And so what do you do when somebody, as you say, when you're living on the street and you're worrying about where you're going to sleep that night or, how you're going to eat that day, it's very hard to do things like remember a medical appointment or get transportation to a job interview or, anything like that. So how do you, is there a way to help people with sort of immediate needs like that to sort of get themselves into that?
The rhythm of...
Yeah.
That is something hard because looking for resources that do that very thing is actually very difficult to find.
Yeah.
We can just look down the list. Okay, so we could remind them with a phone call. Well, what if they don't have a phone? We can remind them with an email. What if they don't have a computer? We can remind them with a card. What if their stuff gets stolen? We could try to remind them in person, but what if we can't rely on them being there in the first place? It's very hard to actually make sure they get to their appointment on time.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors, and it takes a lot out of me because I myself have to take out large chunks of my time just to help someone with one little thing.
Sure.
And I don't mind doing that, honestly. and I've been trying to train other people to do what I do. And it's difficult. It really is, because, I mean, we all have a certain amount of, I guess you could say, well, some people use spoon theory and other things. I use mana. So my mana bar is like this, and every time I help somebody, it goes a little bit down. I have to sleep and rest and build that back up. And I just can't be out there for as much people that are coming in. I mean, I have a list of people that I've helped, and I have a list of people that are waiting for help, and it's just exceeds one person. And I just wish the city or state or something would put together and pay a group of people just to assess the needs of the people and to circulate this information. I think that would be the best point, or the best possible solution that we can right now, is to get the information out there where it is.
Yeah.
And how to get to it, how to access it.
So you brought up an interesting question, and that's, what do you guys do to take care of yourselves, to avoid burning out? Because, I mean, this is a pretty, high energy, high emotional output area of activism. What do you do to
unwind?
what do you do to build your mana back up again when you've had a...
Well, I myself, I do crafting, I do props and things for playhouses, LARPs. I make all sorts of fun stuff, even for film studios and whatnot. Even though it's kind of work, it's not really work.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid under the table, so if you call it under the table, I call it that. That's what we used to use in the South, but all it is I'm getting paid for basic commissions once in a while. It's not enough to really even keep me afloat, but it's more of a hobby. I roller skate. I roller skate a lot when I can. My doctors tell me I shouldn't, but it's just something I've been enjoying since I was young, and I still kind of do. Because of my medical stuff, I have frequent pass outs and blackouts and leg cramps. I had one horrible one last night.
Literally, I think she woke up the entire house.
Wow. I should have thought skating would be good for that. But anyway.
Not when you have a whole different body type like mine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like on the one
I mean,
hand,
I know I couldn't do it. But so what else do you do for self-care and...
Yeah, so honestly, the way I usually end up getting stuff done the best is I just work as much as I can, as hard as I can, for as long as I can until I burn out, and then I just stop for a month or so, and then I pick back up again. I honestly don't think it's the healthiest or most efficient way, but it's the only way I found that really works for me.
Okay.
Well, you've been working on that new tabletop game. That's really been...
Yeah, unfortunately, this burst of energy hasn't been towards actually helping other people. It's just been towards hobbies and personal goals. But
well, you've been needing a bit of extra time, so it's understandable.
Okay. Well, we're just about out of time, but before we go, I do want to remind everybody that Capital City Pride this year is Sunday, June 23rd. And if anybody is interested in volunteering, please go to capitalcitypride.net. Get in touch with us, because we need all the help we can get.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank Lonness and Sheena for being with us tonight and giving us quite a lot to think about. And thank you very much for being on the show. And,
anytime you need me, just send a text.
Thank you for giving me
we
a
hope to
chance.
have you back. So thank you very much. And this is Luke Miller at Tea Time in Olympia, and have a very nice evening.
Bye.